Hello, everyone. I'm Susan Nash, AAPG, and I'm totally excited about today's webinar from Spotfire. The reason I am is because A, I love the topic, and B, this is a unique opportunity to actually look at a tool in addition to the underlying principles and concepts. So this is really a unique thing. It also ties to June 3rd and 4th in Houston, where we are having the AAPG AI and machine learning in subsurface energy. And it's 2 days, and we'll be able to put a lot of these things in practice. So, really thrilled about that as well. And just check the chat or a link to that. Registration opens today. Anyway, it's my pleasure to introduce Alessandro Chimera, who is the Industry Solutions Lead for Spotfire. He'll be presenting first, followed by Drew Scherrer, who is the Energy Applications Engineering Lead. So thank you very much. And before we get started, just a few little housekeeping things. If you have a question, and I'm sure that you'll have lots of questions, please put them in the Q&A. And also, check your emails because you will be getting an email with a link to the presentation. And feel free to share that link with whoever was not able to register, who might be interested. This is such a fantastic and practical um, webinar. So I want to thank you and welcome Alessandra to begin.
Okay, thank you, Susan, for the intro. And thank you for joining us today for this webinar. And today we discuss how subsurface analytics is evolving in the age of AI and how a different approach can support geoscientists and engineers in their daily work. If you're watching this presentation, just keep in mind that the content of the following slides are the property of Spotfire and Cloud Software Group. And before we start, a quick note on this webinar series that we have organized with the collaboration of AAPG. Today's session is the first of three focused on subsurface AI. So today we set the foundation and cover three areas. We discuss about upstream data and the key challenges that teams are facing, why generic AI approaches foreshorten this domain, and then the strategy behind Spotfire for applying AI in energy workflows. The second webinar will take place in summer 2026, and there we go a bit deeper into the technical aspects. We will look at the AI architecture in more detail and show practical examples, including coding workflows with energy data. And then the third and last webinar will take place in fall 2026. And this looks a bit ahead, and we will explore agent-based AI and energy and how workflows will evolve with these technologies. So today is about setting the context. The next sessions will go deeper into how to build and apply these capabilities and what is ahead of us in the future. So let's kick off today's webinar. Let me start with a simple question. Is your team getting the answers they need from their data to take action? Well, in most cases, the customers I spoke to, the answer is pretty simple. No. Not because of lack of data. The upstream space is full of data. We have well-logged seismic production and drilling data. And the issue is how that data is used. Teams still move data across multiple tools. They export, they reformat, they rebuild context. And by the time they get an answer, the moment to act is often gone or has completely changed. And now let's add also AI into the conversation. Everyone talks about AI. But here's a real question. Is AI helping you make better decisions faster, or is it adding another layer on top of an already complex workflow? In many cases, AI is still disconnected from the daily work of geoscientists and engineers. It works on partial data. Overall, it lacks context. And so the output looks more or less good, but it's not always accurate and reliable. But anyway, we will talk about AI concerns later in this presentation. But this is where we need to rethink subsurface analytics. Not more tools, not more data, just a completely different kind of approach. So now finally we can start. Let's have a quick look on our agenda and what we are going to talk about. We'll kick off this webinar by looking at what's really going on in the industry right now. What are the main challenges that industry that is facing, and what kind of approach to data is needed? Next, we move into what is what it means building upstream analytical applications in the age of AI. And after that, we share how Spotfire customers are getting results. And then we will address a key question about why AI adoption has stalled and why it is working. And before wrapping it up, I'll highlight a few key points from today, what you can take back and share with your teams. And of course, we leave some time for your questions at the end. So feel free to drop them into the Q&A box anytime during the session, what Susan was talking about. So the industry challenges. Let's take a look on what's putting currently pressure on your teams right now. So first, the oil and gas sector is built around long and complex asset life cycles. From initial exploration to production and decommissioning, all the decisions we make today can affect outcomes years later. And that puts a lot of pressure on making the right decisions. And sometimes with limited data, the challenge is pretty clear here. It is necessary to reduce risk in decision making and build confidence in those decisions. And then second, we all know how capital intensive the industry is. Every well, every facility is a huge investment. Operations are complex and costly, and safety is always the top priority. And here the challenge is to improve efficiency, maximize the effectiveness, and ensure safe operation. And then third, we operate in a global environment where supply chains are critical and commodity prices change fast. One disruption or market shift can impact the whole operation. And that's why the challenge is to maximize throughput, optimize the recovery, and stay agile, again, supported by data. And when you think about data across all these challenges, there's one common thread. We work with complex, fragmented, and technical data across subsurface drilling, production, and beyond. On the previous slide, we looked at the broader industry challenge. Now I want to bring this down to the daily reality for geologists and engineers. The first challenge is fragmented data. Data is scattered across many different kinds of systems, well logs, seismic, and production systems. And often those systems are not connected. And a lot of time goes into finding, cleaning, exporting, and aligning data before an analysis actually can start. And then the second challenge is the variety of tools. Teams use many different kinds of applications. Each one solves specific tasks, but they're often siloed. And some are even black boxes, which means that it's hard to understand how results are produced, how to add another data source, for example, and how to adapt them for new workflows. And then the third challenge is around AI adoption. There's a strong pressure to innovate. Competition is high and decisions need to be faster. AI and generative AI and agents, they promise speed, but in many cases, they are not well integrated into the daily workflows. And overall, too much time is spent finding data, but not enough time is spent analyzing it to make decisions. Well, and with this in mind, I hand it over to Drew, who will explain why subsurface analysis needs a different kind of approach.
Thank you, Alessandro. So let me make sure my slide advance is working.
Yes.
Let's see here. Okay. Awesome. So yeah, to expand upon what Alessandro talked about really quickly, there's many different silos or departments or data types that you have within your organization. This is an AAPG talk, so obviously there's many tools for geology, for petrophysics, and for reservoir analysis as well as geophysics, and each of these silos has its own specialist tools that are great for doing that deep dive analysis and really drilling down into the data. But where we see kind of an issue in implementation for AI is really kind of trying to connect all of these different silos, as Alessandro said, across your entire organization. And while, some organizations are taking the approach of how can we use AI to speed up one of these kind of different domains. There's also kind of this challenge of how can I use AI and the power of AI and really pattern recognition and making connections across all of my data. And right now, that's, probably the hardest part about implementing AI in energy, particularly in the geosciences, as geosciences is like systems engineering. It's like a big puzzle with a lot of different moving pieces, and our kind of domain requires on this expertise and knowledge. And in addition to hard sciences like math and everything like that, there's also an element of art and an interpretation and using your judgment to see how these pieces of the puzzle fit together. And when that's kind of being done, like as a manual process, oftentimes, um, let's see here, I'm trying to advance the slide. Okay, cool. Oftentimes, that takes many hours. It requires a lot of manual stitching of things together, especially if you're not working in one ecosystem of tools. Piecing together different things often requires you to use a system of, spreadsheets and PowerPoints and flipping between different applications. And we think that there's, a better way of really connecting the data across these. Before I present that, oops, looks like it got advanced a little too quickly. Um, before I go that far and kind of show a little bit about what that might look like, I want to call out that putting all of your data together is only kind of one part of the solution, and that the ability to connect data, whether you're using something like OSDU or OpenWorks or PetroSys, or you're exploring a big data solution, data warehousing like Databricks or Snowflake, getting all of your data in one place definitely helps implementing AI. But ultimately, data integration doesn't really solve the business or the technical challenges that you face every day. And then really what we're focused on is how can AI um, help with that last mile of actually synthesizing the data and visualizing the data and allow geologists and engineers to make better use of that data investment. And so, yeah, this is just what I said. So how can AI help with this? I think we're coming up on a poll question. So I'll go ahead and advance the slides to the poll question just for our on-demand users to see. And yeah, feel free to answer this. It should pop up as a pop-up on your window. And Susan, just let me know when we've gotten a good quorum and I can continue on with the presentation. Or Sarah.
I think we're good.
Okay.
Yeah, we're still getting.
Awesome. So the results of the poll that I can see in front of me, the biggest challenge from the audience is too many disconnected data sources and data formats, followed by many export and import cycles through different tools. And then also, up there was the lack of industry-specific analytics tools and those domain native visualizations. Awesome. Okay, so now going into a little bit more about our approach for trying to build these upstream analytical applications in the age of AI. All right. So one of the poll questions there was, industry native visualizations, and what we've been seeing from our research into what's available in the LLMs that are out there, as well as some of the AI integrations and existing tools, is that a lot of these generic AI tools are not sufficient for visualizing this complex, heterogeneous technical data that Alessandro talked about, specifically for oil and gas. Maps are a big part of the geoscience workflow and energy, but there's other kind of domains like looking at surfaces in 3 dimensions, looking at things like well spacing, trying to visualize directional information like bedding, planes, and fracture orientations, as well as also looking at, say, petrophysical information in a well log. And I'll talk about that in the next couple of slides. Also is important, that was kind of in the poll there, is the data connectivity. Upstream data is a lot of, very specific and kind of niche file formats like LAS, WhatSML for drilling. There's a need to be scalable in developing these AI solutions as well as integrating with your other tools. There needs to be robust extensibility to be able to utilize your own code if you have in-house data scientists or you're a Python programmer yourself. There's a need for low code and no code support if you don't have that data. And then, like I said, scalability, and then also governance and security is a big concern. And so these are kind of, was our kind of wish list or toolbox of things that we wanted to look at creating to make AI more suitable and more plug and play for energy workflows. So I did a little bake-off with a couple LLMs. I don't have them listed here for legal purposes, but ultimately I just created a small, simple prompt that I plugged into a couple just generic, free, publicly available LLMs, which was to create a workflow or a model to evaluate hydrocarbon potential with a triple combo log suite, build a Python script or other suitable deployment for this model to create a single well evaluation or visualization, and I also uploaded an LAS file for that. The LLM, the different LLMs generated a variety of results. I'm sure you're probably familiar if you've been tinkering with different LLMs that are online. The first one generated Python code. When I ran that code in my Python environment, it didn't return any results initially and required me to have some additional user input to define log plots and also some summary data. LLM2 did a surprisingly good job and actually generated Python code with Lasso visualization. It plotted log curves. It actually calculated a saturation curve for both water and oil, and actually delivered a summary, but it was of the whole wellbore, right? So it didn't kind of break it down, even with some tops data in there. And then the last LLM didn't initially generate any Python code whatsoever, even though I prompted that. So I had to reprompt that. The code had a ton of bugs, and the output was well logs, but no calculated logs. And so ultimately, what I'm seeing is that when unconstrained, these generic LLMs provide a wide range of utility and usefulness. And so as we kind of think about just this well log example, um, these are these are some scatter plots, right? And this is something that without using Python and Lasso that AI kind of is familiar with as scatter plots is kind of a visualization that can be used in many different industries. It's available in many different tools, but there's a challenge with viewing log data in scatter plots, and that there's a lot of setup. You have to tweak your colors and your scales, and it's hard to kind of get multiple different types of data into the same plot. And so you end up having to create many different windows, if you will, for each log curve. And so if you're using a triple combo, that's not too bad. But if you want to visualize many different curves, if you have a lot of calculated curves or a min-solve model, you could have a pretty kind of dense and difficult to interact with visualization. And so, like I kind of mentioned, at Spotfire, we're focused on how can we make this better for our users. And so, we've been focusing on, making these industry visualizations like a well log chart be able to be plugged into AI. So you could use an AI tool of your choice, and we'll talk about how we're doing that at the end of this presentation, but allow that to be displayed in the way that you're used to seeing that, be able to tweak and tune your color plots to make it make sense, have multiple log plots in the same visualization, have like gas effect, opacity effect, crossover coloring, and they able to actually use this to build better analytical applications. And so you can bring in your petrophysical data, you can bring in many other different types of data within these AI applications in the same plot and really build out these more integrated tools, right? Having an AI help you create a well log plot, that's great, but you already have TechLog or interactive petrophysics or dynamics or another tool that can already do that. But really, where we see AI being helpful is to combine a lot of these types of data. And so we've tried to build a platform that's suitable for that, as well as being able to ask it questions and make connections across different data types. So this is just one example. We're exploring many different other types of applications on crossing these silos to make these AI enhanced analytical applications, whether you're doing field development, drilling, petrophysics, or production. We're thinking about how we can connect all of these different data types, systems, and software together to make a solution. And so I will hand it off to Alessandro to talk a little bit about some use cases or real world use cases from our customers.
Okay, thank you, Drew. So now let me walk you through two customer success stories where Spotfire made the difference. Oops. Just give me a second. So our first customer is Wintershall. Wintershall is one of the largest producer of natural gas in the Dutch sector of the North Sea. However, the challenge they faced was that they had a relatively small data engineering team. And the team was overwhelmed with requests from the exploration departments, constantly being asked to extract and combine data from multiple disconnected sources. And each of these requests could take an employee up to 8 hours to complete, and often by involving up to 5 different applications just to pull the data together. And to overcome these limitations, they were looking for a way to empower their exploration geologists with a self-service tool to access and analyze various data sets and enable them to identify locations where drilling and exploration well could successfully advance to development and then ultimately to production. And by using Spotfire, they created an internal data analytics platform called Crossfire, which allows the team to see what data is available internally, alert the data engineering team of any missing or nice to have data, and start visually interacting with the data in a single no-code platform. And overall, with Spotfire, geologists have reduced the level of uncertainty associated with their findings and achieved a well portfolio optimization by reducing the cost and time by a remarkable 85%. Our next customer is Oxy. They face the challenge of managing more than 100,000 wells, but their forecasting workflows were too fragmented. Different tools, different processes, and what was worse is that the output was inconsistent. And their analysis application was slow, and it was difficult for teams to align and respond quickly to production changes. And to solve this, their engineering team built two Spotfire applications to standardize forecasting, integrated third-party data, and enabled fast interactive benchmarking. And the solution was powered by Databricks, SQL, and completed with industry-specific visualization, and all finally under one environment. And as a result, the data application load times dropped from 50 minutes that they had before to less than 9 seconds. And their Outlook workflows became faster and more consistent. And this is a great use case to show what really works. When data, analytics, and workflows are connected, teams can finally move faster and make better decisions. Now, this brings to an important question for all of you. You have seen how data and analytics can drive decisions, but what about AI? And before moving on, let's launch a quick poll. So, are you using AI for business decisions? So Susan, let me know when we have a quorum.
I'm not okay, let me see.
Yes, thank
People
you.
are still voting.
Great.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah,
Okay,
this is
so yes,
something
we
that
can
I
read
would have
that.
expected. Yes, I can see that. This is something that I would have expected. No, we're not using AI. Then followed by, we are currently evaluating the use of AI. This is very common in many industries, not only in the oil and gas industry, across manufacturing, pharmaceutical industry. And well, it's interesting also to see that 25% have already AI in production. So let me close that and move on with the presentation. So everyone is talking about AI, but what are the reasons why AI adoption has stalled in many organizations? And what should be done differently? So as we all know, the oil and gas industry is data intensive. We discussed that, Drew talked about that one. And to extract more value from data, many organizations started internal programs to upskill domain experts and geoscientists with data science skill sets. However, applying traditional data science and machine learning techniques comes with some limitations. And these kind of limitations are scalability issues. Many models often struggle to scale due to the massive amount of data and the velocity and also the variety of data in oil and gas. And then we have siloed data. Data is spread across teams, tools, and systems, making integration often pretty difficult. And then manual intervention, data cleansing and preparation takes up the majority of time, leaving less room for innovation. And then the model interpretability. Many models act basically as a black box. Domain experts struggle to trust the result. And then we have a slow adaptation. The industry requires fast decision, but these approaches with machine learning are often too slow. At the same time, upskilling domain experts like geologists and petrophysicists just takes time and is often incompatible with urgent business needs. And to address these limitations, many organizations jumped on the generative AI trend. The goal was to support domain experts and their daily tasks and simplify advanced analytics. And many companies have started to invest heavily and massively into multiple pilots. But unfortunately, a research from the Everest Group in 2024 highlighted a clear trend. Around 90% of these Gen AI proof of concepts projects do not move into production in the near term, and some really never will. But what are the major concerns of using AI? So, according to a recent research, 100% of the 1,000 executives surveyed expressed concerns about the security risks and ethical challenges associated with generative AI and AI solutions. And these concerns are about accuracy and trust. Experts in oil and gas are often skeptical of the accuracy of the Gen AI models. And then we have the security and the compliance. With sensitive proprietary data, the industry worries about the data privacy and the misuse of AI-generated solutions. And then obviously the job displacement. There are concerns that automation and AI may replace skilled human jobs rather than augmenting them. And then obviously the overhype of capabilities. While Gen AI offers great potential, there's a fear that its capabilities are sometimes overpromised, especially when pitched as a solution to all problems. But all of the 1,000 executives interviewed, 100% believe that human intervention is essential to successfully implement generative AI. Let's deep dive into the AI-based tool adoption. But despite the previously seen concerns, many organizations are investing and testing these tools. Around 60% have evaluated enterprise generative AI solutions, but only 20% move to pilot. And what's interesting is that only 5% are reaching production. So there's a clear gap between interest and real impact. And if we break that down, we see four main issues. First, adoption versus impact. Around 80% of firms have tried generative AI tools, but only a small share of customers tools reach productions, and what we've seen by basically also in the poll question. And then second, the sectoral stagnation. Real AI adoption is still limited to tech and media companies. Industries like energy, finance, and healthcare are moving slower, with fewer changes in core workflows. And then third, the shadow AI economy. Consider that more than 90% of employees uses personal language models in their daily work. And this happens outside company systems because enterprises' tools are not meeting their needs. And then fourth, the learning gap. The problem is not necessarily the model. The problem is that tools do not learn from domain context. They do not adapt to workflows and do not integrate well with existing data and systems. And so the question is clear, what works in practice? But before answering that questions, let's launch our next poll. So what are your biggest concerns of using AI? Again, Susan, as soon as we have a quorum.
Yeah, people are voting. They're hallucinating,
Perfect.
security concerns, project progress, lack of tangible benefits, and pretty interesting voting. People seem to have stopped now.
Oh, that's
So,
great. So security
yeah.
concerns. I hear that pretty often. Hallucinating is another problem, obviously, when dealing with AI models. And then also the lack of tangible benefits and less the project progress. Great. Drew, feel free to add any of your comments. And with that, I hand it over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Alessandro. So yeah, I'll just kind of get into kind of the last few slides before we go into kind of takeaways and then kind of open it up for discussion at the end. Um, so we've specifically looked at these research studies and thought about how we can make AI better within these kind of concerns about adoption. Um, Trying to advance my slide. Here we go. Yeah. So, you might have heard of Spotfire Copilot. This is an extension to Spotfire. It's provided, with Spotfire, so it's not, an additional product or upsell or anything like that. But we've been trying to build Gen AI into Spotfire to advance our kind of use of AI. And this allows you to utilize natural language. We'll explore some ways that you can do that and the kind of the range of ways that you could do that. But ultimately, it works with your data sets and documents in the context of Spotfire, so removes a lot of those hallucinations. It's not something that you can ask what the Super Bowl score was. It'll return that that's not kind of within the scope of what this tool does. And kind of on the security and the governance side of things, it's not another LLM. It's not, something that takes your data outside of the environment that you're in. You choose your own LLM that fits within your own kind of company's security and IT policy. And so, as long as that's kind of approved for your enterprise use, there aren't, security or significant IT concerns with you utilizing AI with your data to enhance your experience in analytics. And so whether you're a novice with AI encoding or you're an expert, there's a wide range of ways that you can use this. You can use it to tune your Spotfire experience and creating new visualizations and modifying them. You can use it to explore data that you have connected both in Spotfire, and you can also set it up. And we'll talk about this in our next webinar, which is much more of a technical webinar and much more of a deep dive on actually connecting to documents and other files that are located outside of your Spotfire environment to be able to make those connections, find new data to pull in, or add context to some of the things and trends you might be seeing within your data. It can help you, on the reporting use cases, if you're interested in that, especially with automation. It can write, data functions or essentially Python code within the kind of architecture of Spotfire. And then like we mentioned earlier, it's all, contained within your IT and enterprise environment. So nothing is getting shared externally or anything like that. Advance the slide here. It's a little slow on my end. So here's kind of, a matrice of, where this can be used. And so from everything from more of a kind of a developer point of view of using pattern recognitions, writing codes, generating charts and applications, doing, your own private deployments. The challenge a lot of times for developers with AI is that you can develop some really awesome, cool tools, but it's really hard to deploy that to your organization. And so we're kind of seeing a lot of interest in utilizing Gen AI within an environment like Spotfire because we already have that scalability, that shareability with both the desktop, the web client, authors and consumers and everything like that. It's kind of like an application platform of I can utilize AI. Um, generate an application and then be able to share that either internally or externally, depending on my use case. For the subject matter experts or the geologists or engineers out there, you can just ask questions that you're thinking of in your head to your data and get examples. So a lot of those what if questions don't require, a lot of setup. Have to go into the specialist tool, make a new map, generate a new data set. You can ask these questions about, is my production, more related or more correlated to GOR? Is it more correlated to lateral length, spacing, GOR, etc.? Insights without having to create a new application every time you think of something. It makes it really easy to just go through your regular just Spotfire experience, as well as also preserves these questions and audit trails so that you can go back and even bookmark some of these analyses. And then if you're more of an executive joining us, it allows you to, consume the applications that your technical experts have built and ask questions, at a level that makes sense to you. It can help you with translations to translate these analytical patterns that your geologist has found to how does this actually impact my business? And of course, with our kind of enterprise grade control, all of your proprietary data sources stay within the environment. So, you're not sending anything to, an LLM from the Spotfire side that's being used to train or share or anything like that. It's all within your enterprise deployment of your tool of choice. So a couple examples, because it's constrained within Spotfire, it's trained the documentation that we have. So you can ask it questions that are like, how do I do this within Spotfire rather than going to help or support or something like that. You can customize your conversation. So you can ask it things like, what are our internal definitions? How many units of production we sell in, say, a quarterly report? It can generate a report. You can use it to interrogate some data, like for instance, perhaps you could ask it what was the highest production quarter of the last 5 years, or what is the forecasted gas production next week in our Bakken wells. You can use it to create those visualizations, like compare the production of wells in a bar chart by GOR. Show me the trend of production over time for all of my Woodford wells separately. And then you can also use it for coding within the context of the data that you have. So you could have it write a Python script or an R script that builds a regression model. Maybe in the energy kind of use case, it could create, an IP 30 regression based off of GOR formation and type curve areas. So a lot of utility. And in the next webinar, we'll go down into the actual architecture of how this works with RAG, with Vector and GraphDB, and talk about, how we are integrating with both the standard data types, Excels and flat files that you might be using in Spotfire, the industry data types in specific, so going into LAS, going into WhatSML, as well as documentation. So, if you have flat files, PDFs, Word documents, how you can actually bring then that information as well into your AI environment to really constrain it, prevent those hallucinations, keep it secure, keep it so that it's actually adding tangible value, and also leverage these industry visualizations that allow you to actually make decisions with the data that the AI is pulling together rather than just, have it, throw at you a bunch of tables or generic visualizations that aren't as helpful. And I will hand it back off to Alessandro to take us to key takeaways and kick off our discussion.
Okay, thank you again, Drew. So before moving to our Q&A, let me give you a few final takeaways. So let me close the webinar with what we've seen today. The goal is simple. Geologists and engineers must be empowered to make faster and better decisions. This is clear. In Upstream, data is complex and spread across many systems, and the real value comes from turning all available data into clear decisions across the full oil and gas life cycle. This is what leading companies, by the way, are focusing on. And today, we have walked you through three main capabilities that can make the difference. First, human and AI-powered visual data exploration. Engineers and geoscientists work directly with the data, with AI supporting the analysis and speeding up the insights. And then second, the industry-native visualizations. Data is shown in the right context. Well logs and subsurface data are not generic charts, but views built for domain experts. And then third, unlocking value between specialist tools. Instead of moving data back and forth, you connect to those kind of systems and you create a unified view. And this reduces manual work and improves consistency. And when you combine these three elements, teams spend less time handling data and more time making decisions. So, and if you want to learn more, I would like to invite you to visit our dedicated website for oil and gas, where you can find demos, more industry use cases, training, and enablements. We have also a rich community page where you can participate in discussions, find the latest data connector and specific data functions, and also add-on visualizations. In addition, we run our Dr. Spotfire meeting monthly to help new and advanced Spotfire users to get most out of the platform. So, and with that, I move it to the Q&A section of our webinar.
Fantastic. Wow, this is really, really great. And based on the engagement with a lot of people that are very interested, and there are a lot of really good questions. So why don't I start with the ones that are kind of practical? Quite a few people are interested in finding out who to contact at Spotfire to ask specific questions to see if they have functionality or how to add functionality to their workflows. What's the best way and who should people contact?
Well, here you have our contact page, but feel free to reach out to myself and also to do Scherrer, and we will forward your question internally or respond directly.
Perfect. Yes, and also people can, if they forget, they can contact us at AAPG through education@aapg.org, and we will get you in touch. So that's all good. Now, another couple of philosophical questions or strategic questions, which are very interesting. Joseph Versfeld says, ExxonMobil said this week at CIRA that, quote, we are months away, not years away, from fully automated detection of exploration prospects, end quote. How does this square with executive polls and this forum's polls? Is there a tech gap between some of the majors and other operators? And just to add to this question, I think that the focus that ExxonMobil is talking about is automation. It is, and so that it's putting how to put all the pieces together and automating those. And what you're actually doing is pulling apart the pieces and looking at how those pieces work. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. I think that yeah, there's definitely a tech gap between majors and other operators. I've seen, in other cases where, a lot of energy and time and resources are being spent on that automation of, evaluating prospects, looking for overlooked areas, and there's kind of a whole range of, you know, the polls and the research that we presented and of course in this are going to present a kind of a wide range of different views. And we've seen some operators go very deep into AI, invest a lot of time and resources into it. I know Exxon in particular has invested a lot in high performance compute and being able to process these large exploration data sets to be able to enable them to do things like that automated prediction or detection of exploration prospects. Um, but I think that's kind of like a, hey, let's look here, and less of a, can I work up an entire prospect for exploration? And so there's still a need to actually go through and vet those prospects that are being generated by their systems, to have geologists and engineers run the economics, evaluate the risk, go out and be on site and actually drill the appraisal wells and the exploration wells, and kind of piece together a development plan. So, I think there's really interesting things that are coming up in these public forums and these conferences, and I imagine we'll see a lot more of that as we approach, some of the AAPG conferences like EarTech and Image later in the year. But there's still people that are kind of sitting on the fence, like those polls have shown, of, they're not sure how much they trust it. They're using it for kind of more of those, back office or kind of tedious tasks to make that more efficient. And then there's others that, are trying to be more of a first mover and really go out, like Exxon, doing these, complex subsurface work with the help of AI. So hopefully that answers that question. But if not, feel free to submit a follow-up and I can get to that in the Q&A.
Well, I'm going to jump in just to see to tie back to what you were saying at the very beginning. And in one of your first slides, you talked about one of the key coordinates or key factors is data integrity. And I would say that one of the advantages that the super majors have is that they spend a lot of money with like AWS and Databricks and other companies to make sure that the data is organized and accessible. And so that brings to mind one of the major disadvantages that small companies have is in low cost, rapid ingestion and data harmonization and data quality. How do you propose to work with small companies to help them with that?
Yeah, that's a great question. A large company like Exxon has, a lot of dollars that they can throw at this. And, when we think about data storage and, data, like we call it, integration as part of that piece of the puzzle. Obviously, if you can do that, that's great because it allows you to make those connections. But I think within Spotfire, it's still possible to do that kind of at a smaller scale for those smaller, more nimble operators. Whether you are leveraging maybe a smaller deployment of a Snowflake or a Databricks, or you're using some kind of data virtualization app, or even if you're just doing everything in memory, because we really focus on those data relationships within the product as kind of like, our bread and butter or core.
Mhm.
That enables you to already have those relationships in place so that when you do want to use AI to kind of speed up that workflow, find things that I'm missing or overlooking or kind of remove my bias, that kind of plugs in a lot easier. So you can kind of use this as like a mini platform to help augment that AI experience. If you don't have the time, the resources, the dollars to spend on a big data solutions, having your own, HPC computers. Of course, that's still possible with Spotfire if you are one of those customers. But yeah, we think that we can appeal to a kind of a broad range of the audiences there, and how much resources that they have. And like we said, the Copilot extension is um, provided with I believe it's the enterprise license here at Spotfire. So most of our customers have access to this already
Okay, perfect.
and
So
can
we
use it
have
today. Yeah.
another top-rated comment, and they're seeking it's from an anonymous attendee who's wanting to clarify the relationship between generative AI and machine learning or deep learning. So the anonymous attendee says, Gen AI term is used for the AI tool that creates new content. That content can be text, images, code, audio, or video, hence the word generative, and the tie to large language models. So if you want to extract data from logs, that's traditional AI or machine learning. If you want to analyze trends in production, you use machine learning analytics. Predict future output, that would be predictive AI or deep learning, machine learning. So using Gen AI for articles for ML-based workflows isn't the same. I think that you've been talking about the workflows and how they all come together. So maybe you could address that and just show how Spotfire uses the machine learning in conjunction with the Gen AI.
Yeah, for sure. So machine learning has been available in Spotfire for quite some time. We have the Spotfire Statistica product that has over 100 different algorithms that can do all different types of machine learning and advanced statistics and analytics. And so that's an ever more integrated part of our product and our AI solution. And we're taking a really all of the above approach. So we do have generative AI. We do have kind of more, traditional AI and machine learning. We have a recommendation in it, engine that allows you to kind of identify which visualizations are most appropriate for your data. You can, select and analyze marked data. And then what we'll talk about a little bit more in the following presentations is how we're actually approaching, some of those more predictive AI type of methods and systems, as well as in our final presentation, we'll actually talk about kind of the agentic AI as well. So actually having something go with it. But yeah, that's a great point. A lot of the articles were more kind of Gen AI based. And there definitely is a difference in the different kind of AI systems, whether that's generative, whether it's recommendation or prediction, or in the future agentic, where it's actually kind of going out and you're giving it a little bit more free rein to act, as its own agent or researcher on kind of your behalf, and then come back with results. So we're definitely approaching all of those, but only had a small amount of time today for the presentation to just show what Alessandro shared.
But what you're really pointing to, and Alessandro kind of pointed to this as well, is that you're actually identifying the places where the Gen AI could fail. And that is if you don't go back in and really look at the algorithms and interrogate what you're doing with the machine learning algorithms and you will obviously incorporate problems because if any of those are faulty, any of those results, it's going to taint the whole thing, especially if you're automating it through agentic AI.
Yeah, exactly. That's, one of our um, concerns, right? Is, how much, freedom you give those agents. And so we have some really exciting materials that we'll share in kind of some of our upcoming presentations and just also marketing materials that go into how we're doing that in a way that, we think is more intentional and honors the data and is less kind of black box or, kind of giving it ultimate free reign and having something that comes back that isn't immediately valuable is one of our concerns.
That's perfect. Okay, so let's go back to some of the questions. So, Mubasher Yagub says, thanks for the webinar. I am a new graduate and want to start machine learning and AI, but I did not study AI and ML. What is the new pathway what's the best pathway to take? And thank you in advance. So
Uh, y-
I guess that's like, yeah, how do you get started?
yeah, I mean, I think a great way to get started is to utilize, especially if you're interested in kind of the context of energy, to utilize that within, what's open source and available. So a lot of state agencies have a great kind of data set of public data. The Volve data set is something that's, I guess, hosted on Databricks now that has, a plethora of information, everything from well logs to production to, WITSML drilling logs and everything like that, that you can get a lot of data with. And then, on our Spotfire community, if you're interested in how to do that data analysis, that machine learning, and that AI with Spotfire. We have a bunch of resources that are listed there. If you click that link or go to that link, as well as some training and enablement resources. We have an educational program that allows you to use your educational email address to get access to our Spotfire projects if you want to tinker with that, including a Copilot, I believe. And then, just from my personal experience, I've found, a lot of learning just through experimenting, using those different LLMs, seeing what happens. There's a lot of great resources out there that are public. If you search on LinkedIn, I know a lot of, geologists, especially during COVID, posted a lot of kind of free courses, some of their own code. For machine learning and AI that I've kind of gone through and that's been really interesting and impactful.
That's good.
Does
Um,
AAPG have some resources for that season?
um, well, we don't have repositories and data sets per se, but we do have data pages. So yes and no.
Yeah.
So now, so there are a number of people who would love to have access to not just the recording, but the presentation itself. So I would just like so Tally Redcorn, thank you, and a few others. I'd like to see if we can somehow make it available, maybe email us and we'll forward the request to you, or they can contact you directly. And then we have one final question. Um, I don't know which one. There's so many good ones, but let's just
Yeah.
talk about, can Spotfire integrate real-time data from geothermal wells with like IoT streaming sensor SCADA for live monitoring dashboards?
Yes. Well, SCADA actually is a system, and SCADA can be accessed through a third-party system to extract those kind of data. But regarding IoT streams, Spotfire is able to access through OPC UA, for example, or can access also through MQTT. That's another possibility, or many different kind of streams. But yes, it not only can access live data streams, but it's also possible to compare those kind of live data streams against historical data and eventually prevent or discover if something is currently happening through the comparison between what is going on and what was happening in the past.
Yeah,
Perfect.
Spotfire can definitely do real-time data streaming, like Alessandro mentioned, for a variety of different, on-demand and real-time data types. And we have a whole kind of product dedicated to that to make that as performant as possible and be able to have both IT and OT data within the same analytical application. And that's also, able to be processed by our AI features as well.
Perfect. And then before we go, I'm just going to take a moment to ask Alessandro and Drew to please type your email addresses in the chat because the presentation has links, but since it's a video, we can't really click on them. So,
Yes, that's true. That's true.
I mean, I think you could go to the Spotfire website, but it might be easier just to go ahead and have your email in the chat. So there we go. Drew, thank you. And want to say thank you again for a fantastic forward-looking presentation. I really look forward to the future ones, and I look forward to seeing you at your tech and at Image, and hopefully at our AI and subsurface energy workshop. So thank you.
So
Thank you.
thank you again for attending.